Hey, welcome back, everyone. And thank you for being here on our first Monday with the new lineup. I mentioned before, we're now doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday live show, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. We're also Thursday for our weekly interviews. And folks, thanks for being here. I want to talk about a few things. We'll go into January 6th, of course, because the hearings have begun. Also, big announcement on that. We're going to be telling the real story about January 6th, as opposed to what you're hearing at the hearings. We have a special feature coming out this Friday. More details to come on this. Folks, we're going to show you the real story and debunk a lot of the nonsense out there. Someone has to do it. We're going to do it. So be sure to stay tuned for that. We should have some announcement pretty soon on the exact times. But this Friday, we're going to be showing the real story of January 6th. So stay tuned. Folks, some stories that I want to go into today. The Supreme Court recently had, a murder plot, not the Supreme Court, but there was a murder plot against one of the justices, against Kavanaugh. The individual was caught, but frankly, it's exposing one of the big, double standards, I'd say, when it comes to this rumor about extremism, because we're hearing about white nationalism and extremism and all these, threats to our entire political system. Meanwhile, actual protests are being allowed that actually violate the law at the homes of these justices. The attorney general under Biden has no interest, it seems, in prosecuting these crimes because protesting to try to alter a court outcome is a crime in the United States. These individuals should be arrested for this. The Biden administration is not arresting them. And now you had one of these individuals plot to and even was armed heading to the home of Justice Kavanaugh in an attempt to kill him. Domestic terrorism, if you want to call it that, the plot to kill a Supreme Court justice, and a lot of media just totally sweeping it under the rug. I'll be talking about this. Also, gas prices, I'm sure you're more than aware, are going up. Now, they're talking about the ceiling on this. People are talking about when it's going to end. I'm going to give you some of my takes on this because, frankly, they don't know. And frankly, this is having a trickle-down effect. People are having to pay more money to go and fill up their cars, to drive anywhere. This is affecting everything from shipping to people driving to their jobs, raising the issue, if you have a long commute, of if it's even worth having the job you might be commuting to. But one of the big issues not being talked about as well is the impact on policing, because many people may not know. Police, of course, have annual budgets. They also have annual budgets for gas. And in some parts of the U.S., they've already burned through their entire annual budget for gas because gas is so expensive. This is causing some real issues. They're moving to telepolicing, where you got an emergency, they can counsel you on the phone basically, unless it's something really serious. So I'll go into that and the implications on that. And also, folks, while the anti-gun push, many of you have been hearing about it, Democrats and even Republicans are working together on some packages. But the Supreme Court is working on its own package that could really undo a lot of the regulations in the U.S., including even potentially some of the really tight concealed carry laws, for example, in New York City. The Supreme Court is expected to rule either today, tomorrow, or the next day on some of these. We're also going to hear a ruling probably on Roe v. Wade coming up. We'll see. But I want to go into what's happening with all this. Now, folks, that said, thanks again for being here. Always a pleasure. Briefly, those of you on YouTube or Rumble, we have a Father's Day special for Epic TV. If you don't have it yet, 50% off. Go into the description below this video, 50% off. Father's Day special, get it now. And again, after about 20 minutes, we'll jump over to Epic TV exclusively. Because, frankly, there's a lot of stuff we can't talk about on YouTube without risking getting banned, as we've experienced previously. All right, folks, that said, let's jump into the first story for the day. I want to talk about what's happening with Justice Kavanaugh and this plot to kill him that was foiled. First story here I'll show you is from Epic Times, and it says this. It says, man arrested near home of justice, a Supreme Court justice. It said he had a gun and wanted to kill, according to officials. There's actually an audio recording of him, too, and it's really creepy. It says this, the California man accused of attempting to murder a Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh made his first court appearance on June 8th in federal court. Nicholas John Roski, 26, appeared in court hours after being arrested with a Glock 17 pistol and a tactical knife in Chevy Chase, Maryland, near where Kavanaugh and his family reside, according to court documents obtained by the Epic Times. Now, briefly into this a bit more. It says, according to charging documents, Roski told law enforcement officials following his arrest that he was upset about the recent leak of a Supreme Court draft decision leaked by Politico, last I remember, which also would be a crime, but the Biden administration is showing no interest in prosecuting this, which frankly, if you look at other leaks, I'm not for prosecuting journalists for leaking information, especially if it's important. For example, but there's a double standard with that as well, such as, for example, James O'Keefe of Project Veritas and some of his employees being raided for getting documents they obtained and tried even returning to the Biden administration. It was the journal of Biden's daughter, allegedly. There's a double standard there as well, but let's go into this a bit more. Now, he was unhappy about this Roe v. Wade, brief opinion that was leaked by Politico, as well as a May 24th shooting at Uvalde, Texas. And it says Roski indicated that he believed the Justice, Brett Kavanaugh, that he intended to kill would side with Second Amendment decisions that would loosen gun control laws. Now, this is an individual who had a Glock 17. Obviously, he had his own firearm, but he was, of course, planning to use that firearm to make sure that, firearm laws stay tight because, again, he's working on ideology and he's anti-gun and pro-abortion. Now, Roski stated that he began thinking about how to give his life a purpose and decided that he would kill the Supreme Court justice after finding the justice's Montgomery County address on the internet, because different groups leaked the address of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh in their push to protest to try to get a court decision overturned, again, which is also a violation of the law, multiple violations of the law, none of which seem to be of any interest to the Biden administration, other than, of course, these individuals who plotted to kill Kavanaugh. And we'll see how that goes, because, of course, the court decisions are just beginning, basically. Now, not only are Democrat leaders encouraging illegal protests at the homes of these justices, not only are they encouraging this with the open statements of these groups, such as Ruth sent us, with the open statements that they're doing it with the intention of trying to block these decisions, of trying to use protests to alter a court decision, none of which is illegal. They should all be arrested for this, technically, right? But they're also trying to write it off. The Democrats are trying to write off this whole thing really at a very interesting time, which is right while the January 6 hearings are taking place. And I'll explain the hypocrisy and interesting notes on that. Epic Times says this, though, on the Democrats' position. It says Pelosi blocks Supreme Court security bill. And she's saying no one is in danger. They just arrested a guy who told police, who had a gun and a knife, heading to the home of Brett Kavanaugh, that he intended to kill Brett Kavanaugh. So Nancy Pelosi actually blocked a bill that would provide additional security to these justices, saying that no one is in danger. This is the woman who, among other Democrats, was cowering under a desk because people were protesting outside. Briefly on that, if you didn't watch, I was just in California speaking at an event we had in Orange County. Kash Patel did his show there. Of course, Kash was really high up in the Trump administration, one of the top security guys with DOD. And he said something interesting, which is, of course, Kash was in charge of security on, the Pentagon position on it. They were trying to provide security for January 6th. They were trying to get Democrats to do it. Democrats were not interested. He was saying, guess what Nancy Pelosi was calling them for when they were saying there was an insurrection outside? She was asking them when the lunch schedule would be back up. That's what the actual calls were of the Democrats who claimed they were cowering, afraid for their lives. They wanted to know when lunch was going to be served, right? I'll go into that in a bit, but let me go into this a bit more. It says Democrat leaders in the House of Representatives on June 9th blocked a bill to increase security for Supreme Court justices, asserting that more time is needed to alter the legislation and that nobody is in danger. Now, this is as the Democrats are endorsing illegal protests meant to alter a Supreme Court decision or block the voting, for this decision. At the same time, they're trying to push this January 6th narrative that disrupting a public procedure, which is, again, that was made for Enron. That was it was to prevent companies from destroying from destroying evidence, court evidence. They're taking that and they're applying it to the counting of the Electoral College votes for January 6th. And they're trying to charge people with 20 years in prison for blocking their, their procedure of trying to count these ballots. Trying to count the Electoral College votes. Meanwhile, they are allowing protests, even protests, encouraging violence against our court system to block a Supreme Court decision. Actually encouraging the very crime that they're advocating for people to get thrown in prison for 20 years for on the other side. Let me explain. Now, Pelosi is saying that, that they're blocking it. The Democrats are blocking the security bill for the justices because, they're saying that they want to make sure that their staffers and stuff are protected as well. They're trying to expand it. But guess what? This is like pressing because what basically right now, today, between now and about Wednesday, is when the Supreme Court is supposed to issue its decision on Roe v. Wade and a few other key things. This is the most dangerous time for these individuals. If they overturn Roe v. Wade, that's when they're going to be in danger. Democrats just ensured, Pelosi herself just ensured that as people are moving to, going to their homes and wanting to kill them, as there are officials encouraging large-scale protests, as Biden himself is saying that it might lead to a light revolution, I'll explain this in a minute, they're blocking a bill that would provide security to these justices as they're endorsing, frankly, these types of protests that really could easily lead to violence. And again, there were even threats of that. Let me show you this, just on this double standard, right? This is Schumer. Epoch Times is reporting this. Schumer under pressure to address past comments after man tried killing Kavanaugh. It says the Senate's top Democrat is under pressure to retract his remarks promising Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh would pay the price. That's an exact quote. Pay the price after a man was arrested near Kavanaugh's home with a gun. And remember, folks, that the Biden Attorney General Merrick Garland allowed threats against the Supreme Court justices. So Democrats themselves, top leaders, Schumer here, for example, were actually making their own statements of threats. The threats, of course, are leading to protests. The protests are leading illegal activity. It's being allowed to take place. Threats are leading to actual people trying to carry out acts of violence, and Democrats are refusing to retract statements encouraging these threats, and also refusing to provide security to make sure the justices are safe from the threats they are making. Wild stuff, and again, really throwing a wrench into the January 6th narrative, where they're claiming, on one hand, while they encourage these types of activities, claiming on the other hand that the carrying out of these activities that they themselves are encouraging are somehow a threat to the entire political system of our country. Again, people getting sent to, really the gulag, essentially 17 months in solitary confinement, a type of incarceration while they await trial that's deemed a human rights abuse in some parts of the United States, like California. If you put someone right now in California under again, solitary confinement, it's called a human rights abuse. And as they call it a human rights abuse on this side, they're wanting people, and in fact doing it, having them sent to that type of human rights abuse incarceration while they await trial for 17 months, facing charges for crimes like picketing and holding up billboards and interrupting an official procedure, which they want 20 years in prison for, right? Double standards all around, right? Let me show you this. Now, I mentioned Attorney General Merrick Garland, and it's saying this now: hapless AG Garland should resign after failure to arrest protesters outside Justice's home. This is Senator Tom Cotton pushing back on this. And it says, Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas called on Attorney General Merrick Garland to resign or face impeachment proceedings following an action after radical demonstrators persisted to break the law by protesting in front of Supreme Court justices' private residences. Under any normal circumstance, this would be an arrestable offense for these protesters. You're allowed to protest in the United States, but you can't do it to try to alter a court decision. That is the real difference here. It says this is the shocking culmination of the Democrat left's war against the Supreme Court and really against our Constitution in America, said Cotton. Chuck Schumer a couple of years ago went to the Supreme Court steps and by name attacked Brett Kavanaugh and said he would pay the price. He wouldn't know it hit him. That was the exact quote from Schumer. He wouldn't know what hit him. He's going to pay the price and wouldn't even know what hit him. And yesterday, a Democrat hitman showed up at Brett Kavanaugh's house to try to murder him, and presumably even his wife and children. Now, remember, folks, that this is the same Merrick Garland, the same Attorney General, who was communicating at these school board meetings to try to get the FBI to investigate parents as domestic terrorists because they're opposing what's being talked about at these school board meetings. Things like critical race theory, things like the transsexual stuff they're pushing, things like a father whose daughter was sexually assaulted in a bathroom because of these, again, laws on the bathrooms, making it so boys can use girls' bathrooms. A father wasn't happy about it. His daughter was raped in one of these bathrooms. Of course, obviously unhappy about it. And how do they react? Well, they don't apologize to the father that his daughter was raped in one of these bathrooms. The same party, ironically, telling you trust all women and, doing the Me Too movement and talking about how bad this stuff is. Little girl was raped. They didn't care about that. What do instead? They want the FBI to investigate parents like this individual as domestic terrorists. That's what the response is. Again, I think digging into the point more and more that the surface narrative is an absolute lie. The surface narrative is not actually what they care about. The surface narrative is just about politics. The issue is just whatever they choose to use as the vehicle for the politics. They don't actually care about them. They don't care about attacks on our political system. Otherwise, they would, of course, they would not be allowing these types of protests to block a Supreme Court hearing. They do not care about the security of our public officials, or they would have passed this bill ensuring that these public officials, Supreme Court justices in this case, are protected as they roll out this very contentious court decision, as, again, people are threatening them. If they actually cared about the procedures in the United States, like, for example, the counting of the Electoral College votes, they would also offer protection for procedures like court decisions. And frankly, if they also cared about, trust all women in this stuff, they wouldn't be sicking the FBI and our counterterrorism forces on parents for getting mad that their kids are being sexually assaulted or raped in bathrooms because of their permissive policies. And again, on this, right? Let me show you this. Not only did the Biden Attorney General allow these illegal protests meant to interrupt the court decision and threaten justices, but they're allowing them to continue. So even after there was this death threat and an attempt to assassinate Kavanaugh, maybe even his wife and children, the Biden administration is allowing these types of protests to continue, these illegal protests, despite all of that, and despite the fact that, again, Nancy Pelosi saying there's no threat against these individuals, no threat against the justices. Let me show you this. Fox News says this. Ruth Sent Us Group, this is the one that has talked publicly about, again, trying to block the Supreme Court to make sure the justices can't cast their votes when they go to cast their votes. Again, committing the same crime that people are facing 20 years in prison for the January 6th protests. They're allowing it on one side, claiming it's, again, a terroristic threat on the other. So Ruth Sent Us Group hinted at targeting Supreme Court Justice Barrett's children and church. It says pro-choice group. Pro-choice, right? Pro-choice group Ruth Sent Us hinted at targeting protests at Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett after the attempted attack on Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Ruth Sent Us posted a call for demonstrations at Barrett's home and church in response to speculation that she will concur with the previously leaked draft court opinion that would overturn Roe v. Wade. A Department of Homeland Security report said the Supreme Court draft opinion has unleashed a wave of threats against officials and others and increased the likelihood of extremist violence. And then, again, so they're acknowledging, right? Department of Homeland Security is acknowledging there's a risk of violence against these justices. Apparently, Nancy Pelosi disagrees with that because she blocked a bill that would protect these justices as the DHS says they're, again, at risk, blocked something that would give them protection against these threats that the DHS says are there, right? The likelihood of extremist violence, and this is a quote from the actual group on Twitter, the one calling for this. It says, if you're in the D.C. metro area, join us. Our protests at Barrett's home moved the needle to this coverage. Ruth Senta specifically noted that Barrett's family's daily schedule and the school her children attend. They're targeting their children and they have their public schedules. Well, they're making their schedules public. They wrote on Twitter, Falls Church is a people of praise stronghold. She sends her 7 kids to a Peoples of Praise church that she sat on the board of directors for. She attends church daily. So that's her daily schedule, and this group wants to target a Supreme Court justice at her church and also is saying where her children are every day of the week. Again, as Democrats are blocking a bill to protect these justices. And as the DHS acknowledges that they are actually at risk of extremist violence, right? All right, folks, I'm going to go into this a bit more. There's a lot of stuff we can't talk about on YouTube, so if you, again, don't have a subscription to Epic TV yet, go in the description below this video. Join us on Epic TV. We'll continue this discussion. Again, we're going an hour and a half. A lot to talk about still. We're going to go more into this because there's a lot I want to show you still. I want to talk about how public policing is about to be demolished by the gas prices. Actually, there's a trickle-down effect I'll show you. And also some of the challenges the Supreme Court is bringing as well to gun control, right? Including in New York, where maybe very soon you could have a concealed carry permit. We'll see how that goes. The Supreme Court may make a determination on this, which would be pretty big. Join us on Epic TV. We'll continue this discussion. Before that, though, if you didn't see it yet, check it out. I recently had Alex Newman on about Agenda 2030 and Agenda 21, working together, again, United Nations and the World Economic Forum. I'll show you a trailer now. We'll jump over to Epic TV afterwards.
The World Economic Forum, as part of this broader global agenda that they're referring to as the Great Reset, they want to completely restructure the global economic system. The implementation of the UN's Agenda 2030. The WEF actually years ago came out and openly partnered with the United Nations in bringing the business community to the table on the implementation of Agenda 2030, which really is a radical plan to restructure every element of life that goes right in with the Great Reset. The UN, the World Health Organization, and all the various specialized agencies, many of which are literally run by agents of Communist China. The Communist Party of China actually came out and through all of its propaganda organs, they started putting out public statements that Beijing played what they described as a crucial role in developing Agenda 2030. And as you read the document, I think that will become very apparent. This is not modeled on the ideas and principles that America was founded on. In fact, it bears much closer resemblance to the type of government and the model of governance that we see in Communist China.
Yeah, a lot of people wondering about Agenda 2030 and Agenda 21. We do an in-depth episode with that, on that with Alex Newman. Check it out on Epic TV. And that said, folks, jump over now. Come join us. Also, we have a Father's Day special, 50% off. Get it now. Come join us on Epic TV. We'll see you there. All right, folks. Thank you for being here. Those of you curious, the tea today is a Taiwanese oolong tea. Now, not only is Pelosi allowing this, not only is Merrick Garland allowing it as well, as again, and not only are the Democrats